The crystalline spires of the ancient city pierced the violet sky like frozen lightning, their once pristine surfaces now dulled by centuries of cosmic radiation. Captain Elena Torres stood at the helm of the UES Pathfinder, Earth's newest deep space exploration vessel, as it descended through the atmosphere of what the crew had designated Planet K-378. They hadn't expected to find anything here. This far-flung system had been marked as ceremonially restricted by the Galactic Council, with no explanation given. Multiple energy signatures detected below the surface, Captain, reported Lieutenant Jack Morrison, his dark eyes fixed on the sensor readouts. They're faint, but they're definitely artificial. And there's something else, quantum variations that don't match any known patterns. Elena ran her fingers through her short black hair, a habit she'd developed during their long journey beyond Earth's familiar stars. 3 months ago, Earth had made its first official contact with the Galactic Council, only to be dismissed as barely emergent and restricted to their own solar system. The Pathfinder's mission was meant to be a simple survey of nearby, restricted zones. No one had expected to find signs of life. Take us down, Morrison. Let's see what the Council doesn't want us to find. The Pathfinder's landing thrusters kicked up clouds of iridescent dust as they touched down near the base of the largest spire. The away team, led by Elena herself, stepped out onto soil that hadn't felt footsteps in generations. Dr. Marcus Wong, the ship's xenobiologist, immediately began taking readings of the environment. The radiation levels are high, he reported, frowning at his instruments. Not immediately dangerous with our suits, but long-term exposure would be devastating to most forms of life we know. They found the entrance to the underground chambers almost by accident, a shimmer in the air that revealed a hidden doorway, its security systems still functioning after all this time. Inside, they discovered something that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. The Meridians were beautiful in their alienness, tall, graceful beings with skin that seemed to flow like liquid metal, reflecting light in patterns that shifted with their emotions. But they were dying. In vast underground chambers, barely 1,000 of them remained, sustained by ancient technology that was slowly failing. Through their universal translators, the Meridian's leader, first speaker Lyra, told their story. They had once been a civilization that spanned their entire star system, peaceful explorers and artists who had created wonders that drew admirers from across the galaxy. But when a nearby star went supernova, the radiation began to slowly poison their world. They had reached out to the Galactic Council for help, expecting aid from their fellow advanced species. Instead, they were abandoned. The Council had declared them cosmically selected for extinction, a cold doctrine that prohibited interference with what they deemed the natural course of evolution, even if it meant the death of an entire species. We watched as our numbers dwindled, Lyra said, her skin rippling with patterns of deep blue sorrow. Our children were born weaker with each generation. The Council's ships still pass overhead, ensuring that no one breaks their quarantine, while we slowly fade away. Elena felt a familiar anger burning in her chest. Earth had faced similar dismissal from the Council, deemed too primitive, too violent, too unpredictable to join their ranks. But where the Council saw primitives, Elena saw potential. How long, she asked. How long do your people have without help? Perhaps 20 Earth years, Lyra responded, her skin shifting to a pale, resigned gray. Our radiation shielding weakens with each passing day. Soon, even these chambers will not protect us. Elena shared a look with Dr. Wong, who was already running calculations on his tablet. Your cellular structure, he said, excitement creeping into his voice. It's similar to some extremophile bacteria we've studied on Earth. If we could adapt their radiation resistance. Captain, Morrison cut in, his voice tight with concern. We've got incoming Council ships, at least 3 of them, on an intercept course. Elena's jaw set with determination. The Council had dismissed humanity as primitive, had left the Meridians to die. Perhaps it was time to show them what primitives could do when faced with injustice. First speaker Lyra, Elena said, turning to the Meridian leader. My people were told we weren't advanced enough to join the galactic community. We were told to stay in our own system and wait until we had matured. But we've never been good at following orders that go against our conscience. Lyra's skin rippled with patterns Elena hadn't seen before, something between hope and disbelief. You would help us? Against the Council's decree? We would help you because of the Council's decree, Elena replied. Humanity has a long history of standing up to bullies who hide behind rules and regulations to justify cruelty. Dr. Wong already has ideas about helping your people resist the radiation. Our engineers can look at your shielding technology. We're not as advanced as the Council, but sometimes the simplest solutions are the ones that work best. The Council ships were entering orbit now, their warning transmissions filling all frequencies. They demanded the Pathfinder's immediate withdrawal, threatening consequences for interfering with a quarantined species. Elena's response was simple: we're going to need backup. A lot of it. She turned to her communications officer. Send word to Earth. Tell them we found someone who needs our help, and we're not leaving them behind. Tell them. She looked at the Meridian children watching from the shadows, their skin flickering with colors of curiosity and hope. Tell them it's time to show the galaxy what humanity stands for. As the message was sent, Elena knew they were about to challenge powers far beyond Earth's current capabilities. But looking at the Meridians, seeing their resilience in the face of abandonment, she also knew they had no choice. Sometimes the measure of civilization wasn't in the advancement of its technology, but in its willingness to stand up for those in need. The first battle in humanity's greatest challenge was about to begin. And Elena Torres, captain of the UES Pathfinder, was ready to show the Galactic Council exactly what primitive humans could do. Earth's response came faster than anyone expected. Within 3 days, the skies above the Meridian world filled with ships, not warships, but research vessels, medical ships, and construction craft. The United Earth Council had voted unanimously to aid the Meridians, consequences be damned. Admiral Zhang Wei of the United Earth Fleet stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, watching as another Council enforcement vessel dropped out of FTL travel. They're trying to intimidate us, he observed to his tactical officer. Notice how they're positioning themselves, always just within weapons range, always with their broadside facing us. The Council's response to humanity's intervention had been swift and predictable. First came the warnings, then the threats, and finally a blockade of ships with technology centuries ahead of Earth's capabilities. But they hadn't counted on human stubbornness or ingenuity. Dr. Marcus Wong had made the first breakthrough in his makeshift lab aboard the Pathfinder. Working with Meridian genetic specialist Ven, he discovered something extraordinary about the radiation-resistant bacteria from Earth. Look at this, he explained to Captain Torres, pointing to a holographic display where silvery particles danced and shifted. The Meridian's cellular structure isn't just similar to our extremophile bacteria, it's complementary. When we introduce the bacterial DNA sequences, their cells don't just accept them, they enhance them. The implications were staggering. Within weeks, the first treatments began showing results. Meridian children who had been born weak and sickly began to show improved resistance to the radiation. Their liquid metal skin, which had been dulled by generations of radiation exposure, began to shine with new vigor. But it wasn't just in medicine that humanity was making a difference. Chief Engineer Aisha Patel of the UES Damascus had been working with Meridian architects to understand their failing shield technology. What she found challenged everything the Council had assumed about human technological capabilities. They'd been thinking about this all wrong, she explained to a group of human and Meridian engineers. The Council's approach to radiation shielding is to create bigger, stronger barriers. But look at what the Meridians' ancestors did. They worked with the radiation, channeled it, turned it into something useful. Using principles that combined Earth's primitive, sustainable energy systems with meridian quantum manipulation, Aisha's team began developing what they called the Symphony Grid, a network of small satellites that could work together to create a protective field around the planet. Each individual unit was simple enough that even Earth's limited manufacturing capabilities could produce them, but together they created something revolutionary. The Council's pressure continued to mount. High Commander Xerxes of the Enforcement Fleet made his position clear: you will withdraw your forces immediately, or we will be forced to take action. Your primitive interference in cosmic selection cannot be tolerated. Admiral Zhang's response was to launch another wave of Symphony Grid satellites. You know what I find interesting, High Commander, he transmitted back. For all your advanced technology, you still haven't figured out that evolution isn't just about survival of the fittest. It's about adaptation, cooperation, finding new ways to thrive. The Council ships began actively interfering with human supply lines, using their advanced technology to disrupt navigation systems and communication. But they hadn't counted on human adaptability. Captain Maya Patel of the supply ship Artemis remembered an old Earth sailing technique, using stellar radiation patterns to navigate when conventional systems failed. Soon, all human ships were using what the Council saw as a deadly hazard as a pathway through space. The Meridians watched in amazement as humans consistently found ways around problems that their own ancestors might have considered insurmountable. Where the Council saw primitive solutions, humanity demonstrated that sophistication didn't always require complexity. First speaker Lyra's skin rippled with patterns of wonder as she watched Earth children teaching Meridian youngsters how to play soccer in the newly shielded courtyards. Your people continue to surprise us, she said to Captain Torres. The Council told us that less advanced species couldn't help us, that it would be dangerous to accept aid from primitives. But you've done more in 3 months than the Council did in a century of watching us die. Sometimes being primitive has its advantages, Torres replied, watching as a Meridian child's skin flickered with joy after scoring a goal. When you're told something's impossible, you haven't learned enough to believe it. The real breakthrough came when Ven, working with Dr. Wong's team, discovered that the radiation-resistant bacteria weren't just protecting Meridian cells, they were gradually transforming the radiation in the environment itself. The simple organisms were breaking down toxic compounds, gradually restoring sections of the planet that had been dead for generations. It was a solution so elegant that even some of the younger Council scientists took notice, though their superiors quickly silenced their admiration. But the seeds of change had been planted. Among the Council's own ranks, questions began to arise about the wisdom of their non-interference doctrine. As the Symphony Grid expanded and the first generation of treated Meridian children grew stronger, humanity's message to the galaxy became clear: compassion wasn't a sign of weakness, and being technologically advanced didn't always mean being right. The Council's response would come soon enough, a full battle fleet, prepared to end this primitive interference, once and for all. But as Admiral Zhang watched the Symphony Grid's coverage expand and received reports of Meridian children playing under open skies for the first time in generations, he knew that humanity had already won the most important victory. They had proven that the measure of a civilization wasn't in the power of its weapons or the age of its technology, but in its willingness to stand up for what was right, no matter the odds. The real battle was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy exactly what primitives could do when they fought for a cause they believed in. Deep in the crystalline archives of the Meridian underground city, engineer Aisha Patel made a discovery that would change everything. Hidden in the ancient data cores, encoded in patterns of light that had waited centuries to be read, she found fragments of technical specifications that made her breath catch in her throat. "Look at this," she called to Ven, her Meridian counterpart, whose liquid metal skin rippled with curiosity as he approached. "Your ancestors weren't just working with radiation, they were manipulating quantum fields at a fundamental level. The Symphony Grid, we've only been scratching the surface of what it could do." The discovery couldn't have come at a better time. The Council's blockade had tightened, their ships now actively preventing supply vessels from reaching the Meridian world. But more worryingly, their long-range sensors had detected something massive assembling at the edge of the system, the Council's main battle fleet. Admiral Zhang called an emergency meeting aboard the UES Horizon. Captain Torres, Dr. Wong, Engineer Patel, and First Speaker Lyra gathered around a holographic display showing the approaching Council armada. 150 capital ships, Zhang reported grimly. Each one carrying weapons that could crack this planet in half. They're done trying to intimidate us, they're coming to end this, permanently. But Aisha's eyes were bright with excitement as she pulled up the ancient Meridian schematics. Maybe not, she said. These quantum field manipulations, they're not just about radiation shielding. The Meridians were developing something far more sophisticated before the disaster struck. A way of working with the fundamental forces of the universe instead of trying to overpower them. Dr. Wong leaned forward, his scientific curiosity piqued. Like how our bacteria work with cellular structures instead of trying to force them to change. Exactly, Aisha nodded. We've been using the symphony grid to deflect radiation, but with these principles, we could do so much more. We could create quantum field resonances that could affect anything, including Council weapons and shields. First Speaker Lyra's skin shifted to a deep purple of recognition. The Harmony Protocols, she breathed. Stories passed down through generations, our ancestors spoke of being able to dance with the stars themselves. We thought they were just legends. Over the next 2 weeks, as the Council fleet drew closer, humans and Meridians worked together in a frenzy of innovation. The Symphony Grid satellites were modified with new quantum field generators, while Dr. Wong's team discovered that their radiation-resistant bacteria had evolved in unexpected ways, developing the ability to interact with energy fields at a quantum level. Lieutenant Commander Raj Patel, Aisha's younger brother and the Horizon's tactical officer, developed new battle strategies based on ancient Earth martial arts. Look at how Aikido masters redirect an opponent's energy, he explained during a briefing. We can't match the Council's power, but maybe we don't have to. We just need to help it flow somewhere else. The Council fleet arrived with a display of power meant to end any thought of resistance. Their ships seemed to bend space around them, their weapons capable of turning planets to ash. High Commander Xerxes' ultimatum boomed across all frequencies, your primitive interference ends now. Surrender the Meridians to their cosmic fate, or share it with them. But humanity and the Meridians had one final surprise prepared. As the Council ships moved into attack formation, Aisha activated the modified Symphony Grid. Across the system, thousands of satellites began to pulse with quantum energy, creating patterns of resonance that the Meridians' liquid metal skin reflected in symphonies of color. What they never understood, Aisha said softly as she watched the field harmonics build, is that the universe isn't about domination. It's about harmony. About understanding that everything is connected, that even the smallest actions can create ripples that change everything. The Council fired their first volley, beams of energy that could vaporize mountains. But when they hit the quantum fields generated by the Symphony Grid, something extraordinary happened. Instead of destruction, there was transformation. The energy was caught in the resonance patterns, redirected and reformed. The Meridian children watching from their newly restored surface dwellings saw it first, their natural sensitivity to quantum fields letting them perceive what was happening. The Council's weapons weren't being blocked or destroyed, they were being woven into the very defensive network protecting the planet, making it stronger. Impossible. High Commander Xerxes' voice crackled with rage across the communications channels. Your technology is centuries behind ours. You cannot comprehend the forces you're dealing with. Maybe that's your problem, Captain Torres responded, watching as another Council blast was absorbed and redirected. You've forgotten that understanding doesn't always require complexity. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most profound. As the battle continued, the Symphony Grid's quantum fields grew stronger with each attack. Dr. Wong's evolved bacteria, released into space, began breaking down the Council ship's energy shields at a quantum level. The Meridians themselves, their bodies now strengthened against radiation and naturally attuned to quantum fields, began actively participating in the defense, their combined consciousness helping to guide and shape the protective harmonics. Humanity had created something unprecedented, not a weapon of destruction, but a system of protection that grew stronger the more it was attacked. The Council fleet, for all its overwhelming power, found itself unable to break through defenses that worked with natural forces instead of trying to overpower them. And as the Council commanders watched their most powerful weapons being transformed into protective energy, some began to question centuries of doctrine. Perhaps, they realized, there was more to advancement than raw power. Perhaps these primitives understood something that they, in their technological sophistication, had forgotten. The battle for the Meridian world would soon reach its climax, but already the galaxy was changing. Humanity had shown that compassion, combined with innovation, could overcome even the most entrenched powers. The age of cosmic selection was about to end, replaced by something far more powerful, the understanding that true strength lies not in domination, but in harmony. High Commander Xerx stood on the bridge of the Council flagship Eternal Doctrine, watching in disbelief as his fleet's most powerful weapons were transformed into swirling patterns of protective energy around the Meridian world. For the first time in his 3-century career, he felt something he hadn't experienced since his youth: doubt. "Initiate the Sundering Protocol," he commanded, his voice harder than quantum steel. The Eternal Doctrine's main weapon began to power up, a device capable of tearing apart the fabric of spacetime itself. Even the Symphony Grid couldn't possibly defend against that. Aboard the UES Horizon, Lieutenant Commander Raj Patel's sensors lit up with warnings. "They're charging something massive," he reported to Admiral Zhang. "Energy readings are off the charts, like a small star being born." Engineer Aisha Patel's hands flew across her console as she analyzed the readings. "The quantum harmonics, they're trying to create a rupture in spacetime." Her eyes met her brother's. "If that hits the Symphony Grid." But before she could finish, First Speaker Lyra stepped forward, her liquid metal skin pulsing with patterns no human had seen before. "Perhaps," she said, her voice carrying an ancient wisdom, "that is exactly what we need." Dr. Wong, who had been monitoring the evolved bacteria's interaction with quantum fields, suddenly straightened. "Of course," he breathed. "It's not about stopping the rupture, it's about guiding it. Like how the bacteria don't fight radiation, they transform it." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Aisha and Lyra worked together, reconfiguring the Symphony Grid's quantum field resonance patterns. Dr. Wong's team released a new strain of their evolved bacteria, specifically attuned to spacetime fluctuations. Captain Torres coordinated with the other Earth ships, positioning them to strengthen key points in the defensive network. The Eternal Doctrine fired. A beam of pure white energy, so bright it seemed to bend darkness itself, lanced toward the Meridian world. For a moment, everything seemed to hold its breath. Then the Symphony Grid activated. Instead of trying to block the spacetime rupture, the quantum fields embraced it. The bacteria colonies acted like billions of tiny conductors, guiding the energy through precise resonance patterns. The Meridians themselves, their liquid metal bodies naturally attuned to quantum fields, added their own harmonics to the symphony. What happened next would be debated in scientific circles for centuries to come. The spacetime rupture, instead of destroying the Meridian world, was transformed into something beautiful. The quantum fields shaped it into a cascading array of micro-ruptures, each one precisely controlled, each one adding its own note to an impossible symphony of energy. The Meridian children saw it first, their quantum-sensitive perception allowing them to witness something no being had seen before. Space itself began to dance. Waves of probability collapsed into patterns of protection. The very forces the Council had tried to use for destruction became a shield more powerful than anything brute force could create. How? High Commander Xerxes' voice cracked as he watched his ultimate weapon transformed into a display of cosmic artistry. How can you possibly understand these forces? Because we don't try to understand them alone, Captain Torres replied. We work together. We listen, to the meridians, to each other, even to microscopic bacteria. Every voice adds to the harmony. The shield created by the transformed space-time rupture didn't just protect the meridian world, it began to heal it. The quantum harmonics, guided by the symphony grid and enhanced by the evolved bacteria, started reversing centuries of radiation damage. Everywhere the energy touched, life began to flourish again. Watching from their ships, several council commanders saw something that shook their centuries of certainty. The primitive humans and the dying meridians had not just survived an unsurvivable attack, they had turned it into something that created rather than destroyed. The first dissenting voice came from a young council scientist aboard one of the support ships. High Commander, she transmitted on an open channel, they've proven our fundamental assumption wrong. Cosmic selection isn't just about survival of the fittest, it's about adaptation, cooperation, finding new ways to thrive. Other voices joined hers. Council ships began breaking formation, their crews watching in wonder as the transformed energy continued its work of renewal. The doctrine of non-interference, maintained for centuries through force and fear, was crumbling in the face of something more powerful, hope. Admiral Zhang stood on the horizon's bridge, watching the Council fleet's cohesion fracture. They're starting to understand, he said softly. Sometimes the strongest response to power isn't more power, it's showing a better way. But the battle wasn't over. High Commander Xerxes, his worldview threatened by what he was witnessing, prepared to make one final, desperate attempt to maintain the old order. The Eternal Doctrine's weapons began charging again, this time targeting not just the Meridian world, but the Earth ships as well. What no one knew was that the symphony grid had evolved beyond its creator's intentions. The quantum harmonics, the bacteria, the Meridian's natural abilities, and humanity's innovative spirit had combined to create something new, something that would change the galaxy forever. As the Eternal Doctrine prepared to fire, Captain Torres shared a look with first speaker Lyra, whose skin was shimmering with patterns that seemed to reflect the very fabric of space-time itself. Ready to show them what harmony really means? Torres asked. Lyra's response rippled across her liquid metal skin in colors humans had no names for. Ready to show them what becomes possible when we work together. The final confrontation was about to begin, and with it, the dawn of a new age in galactic history. As the Eternal Doctrine's weapons powered up for their final assault, something unprecedented happened in the space around the Meridian world. The quantum harmonics generated by the symphony grid began to resonate at frequencies never before recorded. Dr. Wong's evolved bacteria, now thoroughly integrated with the defensive network, started emitting patterns of bioluminescence that matched the Meridian's liquid metal skin. Energy readings are transforming, Lieutenant Commander Raj reported, his voice filled with wonder. It's as if the quantum fields are becoming self-aware. Engineer Aisha Patel's eyes widened as she studied the data streaming across her console. Not becoming self-aware, she breathed. Becoming connected. The symphony grid, the bacteria, the Meridian's natural quantum sensitivity, they're all synchronizing into a single harmonic pattern. First speaker Lyra's skin rippled with colors that seemed to pull at the fabric of reality itself. We remember, she said, her voice carrying echoes of ancient knowledge. Our ancestors spoke of this possibility, not just working with quantum fields, but becoming one with them. We thought it was just a legend. High Commander Xerxes' voice boomed across all frequencies. This ends now. You have corrupted the natural order, defied cosmic selection. The Council's judgment will not be denied. The Eternal Doctrine's main weapon reached full power, its energy signature threatening to overwhelm all sensors. But Captain Torres saw something the Council commander didn't. Look at your own fleet, Commander, she transmitted back. Look at your own people. Throughout the Council fleet, ships were breaking formation. Their crews had witnessed something that challenged centuries of doctrine, the power of cooperation over domination, of harmony over force. The young Council scientist who had first spoken out was now joined by dozens of others, their vessels moving to form a barrier between the eternal doctrine and its targets. "We were wrong," the scientist transmitted. "These primitives haven't corrupted the natural order, they've revealed its true nature. Life doesn't advance through isolation and abandonment. It advances through adaptation, through working together." The eternal doctrine fired its weapon, a blast that should have annihilated everything in its path. But it never reached its targets. The symphony grid, now operating at a level beyond its original design, didn't just redirect the energy. It transformed it. The destructive beam became a cascade of quantum possibilities, each one guided by the combined consciousness of humans, meridians, and even the evolved bacteria. Where it touched the radiation-scarred surface of the meridian world, new life burst forth. Ancient ruins began to heal themselves, their quantum structures awakening after centuries of dormancy. High Commander Xerxes watched in stunned silence as his ultimate weapon became an instrument of renewal. The eternal doctrine's energy was being fed back into itself, not as a destructive force, but as a harmonic resonance that made the ship's quantum core sing in tune with the very forces it had tried to dominate. "You see?" Admiral Zhang's voice was gentle as he transmitted to the Council fleet. "This is what becomes possible when we stop trying to control the universe and learn to work with it instead. When we recognize that true strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together." The effect spread beyond the immediate battle. The quantum harmonics reached out across space, touching other worlds that had been abandoned by the Council's doctrine of non-interference. On dozens of planets, ancient quantum technologies began to awaken, responding to the symphony of cooperation that humanity and the Meridians had created. First speaker Lyra's skin blazed with patterns that reflected this new reality. "Our ancestors understood," she said, "but the knowledge was lost in our struggle to survive. It took our meeting with humanity to remember that the greatest power in the universe isn't in weapons or technology. It's in the connections we forge, the harmony we create together." The Council fleet, or what remained of it, hung motionless in space. High Commander Xerxes' next transmission carried something no one had ever heard in a Council leader's voice before: humility. "We have much to learn," he said quietly. Perhaps it is we who need to evolve." In the months that followed, the galaxy changed. The Council's doctrine of cosmic selection was replaced by a new philosophy, one that recognized the strength in diversity, in cooperation, in finding new ways to help life thrive. The Symphony Grid's technology spread, not as a weapon, but as a tool for healing worlds that had been abandoned to their fate. The Meridians flourished again, their civilization reborn not as an isolated achievement but as a testament to what became possible when different species worked together. Their liquid metal skin now rippled with colors that celebrated connection rather than mourning isolation. Humanity, once dismissed as primitive, became known throughout the galaxy not for their technology, but for their ability to innovate, to adapt, and most importantly, to care. They had proven that the measure of a civilization wasn't in the power of its weapons or the age of its achievements, but in its willingness to help others, to find new solutions to old problems, to stand up for what was right even when facing impossible odds. Captain Elena Torres stood on the surface of the Meridian world, watching human and Meridian children playing together under skies that now shimmered with protective quantum harmonics. Dr. Wong's bacteria had evolved into a symbiotic part of the planet's ecosystem, turning what was once deadly radiation into nutrients for new life. Engineer Aisha's symphony grid had become a model for a new kind of technology, one that worked with natural forces rather than trying to dominate them. "We did more than save your people," Torres said to first speaker Lyra as they watched the children play. "We changed the galaxy." Lyra's skin rippled with colors of joy and hope. "No," she replied, "we changed it together. And this is only the beginning." Above them, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if responding to the new harmony that had been created. The silent stars spoke not of isolation and abandonment, but of connection, of possibility, of what could be achieved when different species came together to help each other thrive. The age of cosmic selection was over. The age of harmony had begun.